And so we wanted to take this morning and just share our hearts with you about just some things that God has shown us through the years of marriage, through the years of parenting, and through the years of just doing life with the Lord. And there's some things that God has shown us through His Word, and there's some things that God has shown us through our mistakes. Anybody here made any mistakes? Yeah. And so a lot of my parenting advice for parents is usually don't do what I did. And I've got a lot of parenting mistakes that I've made, as well as marriage. But today we're just gonna dive in. I've got a few things to talk about, and one of them is what does marriage look like from God's perspective? And really starting with before you even get married. And we want to start with, I know we've got some people in here that are single, and I know that we have people that are thinking about marriage. Maybe you're called to celibacy, but that's not everyone in this room, right? And so there's God preparing your heart for marriage and a godly marriage. And so we have kids in our house that we're preparing them to be married one day. We're raising adults, and we want to share from that perspective. Anything that
So I love being married to Brandon. But what I would like to share is at Grace Team, I was sharing how I mother Jocelyn a lot, and it could get overbearing sometimes. But one thing that I share with her, she says no, but I'm like, yeah, right. One thing I share with her is when we are listening to someone, we want to look at the fruit before we make a decision. So like take the elections, for instance. We want to look at the fruit of the policies, not just the policy, or the fruit of, sometimes we can hear good things, but we have to look at the fruit before we make a decision. And so what I would say is we have made many, many mistakes in our marriage, but the fruit of our marriage is very sweet. And if you want to know if it's sweet, then ask our kids. And so if you want to learn marriage, normally I would say, if there was another couple up here, I would say, well, what's the fruit of their marriage? Will I receive from them? Same with parenting. If you're going to learn how to parent, are you going to go to someone who has kids that, no, you want to learn from people that have great kids. So I'd say that not because I want to boast, but if you know us, you know our children are amazing. So I'm hoping that you will listen to maybe a little bit.
And if you don't boast, I'll boast
weird.
on you.
I feel weird saying that because we're talking, but
Yeah.
I have to say we have the fruit of a great marriage. It's not just for show on Sunday morning. And we have the fruit of great children. It's not just for show. Many people say pastor kids are the worst, but our kids are not the worst. So I say, that sounds weird. I feel weird saying that.
Well, you're honoring our children, and I think that's okay. So let me ask you this, and let's say, what we want to see from a person that's thinking, I'm going to have a healthy marriage. I want to see today that you guys just get some wisdom tips on what to look for, because if you want a healthy marriage, it takes two, okay?
Yeah.
And so, our children are getting to that age where they're starting to notice and attract other people. And so we're going through an interview process with some of the people that are interested. I am as a father, right? And so I want to know some character things. And that's what she's talking about the elections, is we're going to look at not what they say, but we're going to look at their history, right? And this is, finding a pastor. This is finding a spouse. This is finding
any kind of mentor.
A job you want to work at. If you just have life happen to you, then that's not. A lot of people say, well, I'm just being led by the Spirit. No, you're not being intentional to live life. You're just letting life happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let's start there with marriage.
So let's start with marriage.
So marriage, intentionality. So
Yep.
Brandon's always been really, really good about being intentional of investing in me. And he's always been intentional to say we need to have a date. Like it's not up for, when you're not busy. But he's like, no, I know you're busy, but we have to be intentional about dates. We have to be intentional about spending time together, because like when we're dating, we were intentional no matter how busy we got, and to have a great marriage, we have to be intentional, right?
Sure. And if I'm just going to be real, if Mark Cuban came in the room and said, "Hey, I'm writing checks, and I'm going to be up here on Tuesday. Will you guys be here? Anybody going to be here?" Yeah. What you've said, though, is if you're not going to be at your date, or you're not going to set time aside for your date, you're saying that a check or money is in place of the time that whoever's writing it. And I'm just being real right now, because the love of money is the root of all evil. And so what it does is that when it's out of priority, it becomes a root. It's not money is the love of all evil, because we all know that money is needed, and Jesus knows that. And so when we're teaching our children to find a job, okay, money is not what they're looking for. That's what we're not teaching them that. And same thing with a spouse. I'm going somewhere. Same thing with a spouse, is you're not looking for someone just to fill that need or fill that void that you have. You're looking for someone that's on a calling from God that's close to the same, like your desire in the kingdom of God is the same as that person. Okay? Now, we're talking about before marriage and looking healthy, and you're going, man, this person is seeking first the kingdom. Because
Okay, so next point from intentionality, on being intentional on dating and spending time, I would say is, again, having that foundation in the kingdom, having that foundation in the Word. I would say foundation in grace, because we used to seek Jesus really hard, but it was from a place of trying to please God.
Right.
And that's when our marriage was falling apart. So finding how to relate to not just us, but in relationships as well to each other through a foundation of we are fully accepted by God, and from the standpoint of grace, then allows us to be able to start relating with each other on that same foundation, right? And so I would say being intentional, be intentional to invest. We were very intentional in the beginning of our marriage to go to every marriage class we could go to, read every book we could read on marriage. But not just that, those are tools, but we have to have the foundation of the Word, right?
Yeah, and so we're teaching a lot about being a new creation. And so you're made righteous, you're made holy. And so you've been seated in heavenly places. And then there's just some tools to do some earthly things. And so because I'm a new creation doesn't mean I'm going to go into the oil field and know everything about the oil business. And I'm using that because I know nothing. I mean, I really don't. I don't know anything about the oil business. But there's some Christians that think that, okay, well, I'm righteous, I'm holy, I'm just going to get in the Word and my marriage is going to be great. Well, guess what? You might want to think about reading some books on marriage. Because it's like the oil business. There's people that have done it, and they've been experts in it. And so if I was going to build a car, hey, I'm going to study what people have done in the past, how to build a car. I'm just explaining to you that there are some practical things that need to be done in a marriage. Does that make sense?
All right, so the third thing.
Yeah.
Because I organize things in my brain, apparently.
Yeah. She's keeping me on track is what she's doing.
So the third thing in marriage, and then we can move on to your next one.
Yeah.
So the third thing in marriage is on that message of grace, we have to, I have a scripture. Colossians 3, verse 12 says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." The word patience here in the NIV version is long suffering in New King or the King James, right? Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Now, this is actually talking to people in the church. So this is Paul is saying, hey, you guys gotta get along, right? Forgive each other. So bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has any grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. So the third point on marriage, that in order to have a real healthy, good marriage, is we have to literally walk those scriptures out, meaning it doesn't mean we're perfect, right? It means that when we mess up or get offended, because offenses are coming, right? It's not a matter of if, right? We're going to get offended if we're in relationship with each other. So the question is, can we forgive as Christ forgave ourselves? So I would say that is probably, it's also the grace message, but I think that is probably at the very core of a fantastic marriage. People who don't even know Christ, but that have learned how to forgive, have a happy marriage, right?
I think that's good. And I think that we go back to the foundation of, is that person seeking first the kingdom? Because if they are, let me tell you something that, when I know that Dana's, wrong, because we've all been wrong, right? I've been wrong, she's wrong. But I don't have to, she goes before the Lord and the Lord corrects her. You understand that the Lord does correct. I know we're grace people, but the Lord brings correction. And same thing with me. I mean, I'm just, there's things in my life that God has just corrected in my heart, my attitude, and things towards her that I'm like, if she had told me that, I would have probably, gotten all defensive. But when the Lord speaks to you, you see, I don't, she's not my Jesus. She makes a really bad Jesus. She makes a wonderful wife. Right?
Yeah.
And so if she tries to be Jesus for me, then there's this fighting against one another. And so read books. Again, if you're a mechanic, you've probably watched some videos on, how to fix something.
Yeah, I remember in the early years, I don't know if it was with Jocelyn or Zeal when they were born, and I freaked out because I didn't know what to do, and I felt like a terrible mother. It's probably when Zeal was born because they were getting a little older, and I was just like, I'm messing them up totally. And so I literally pulled every book I could find on parenting, and which is interesting because you're going to find it all over the map, right? This book says this, spank 'em. This one says time out. This one says this and this and this and this. And so my greatest tip that I can give from parenting books, which I got a lot of good stuff, was whatever you do, be consistent. So if you're going to utilize